From listener and reader June, Dee, you continually touch my heart and soul with your observations and comments. Then you and Carol get together and make me laugh and love your common sense approach to gardening. You are the highlight of my week. Thank you, June. You're the highlight of our week.
Thank you very much. And welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden. It's measured in square feet and tons of weeds.
Here too. And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on several acres out in the country. Way too many.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Carol.
Hello, Dee. So we're recording this on Tuesday the 7th. Should I mention it's your birthday or should we keep that a big secret?
Well, I think that ship has already sailed for sure. I mean, I saw our quotes for today and I had to laugh because I was like, oh, those are funny since it's my birthday. Everybody will see in a minute.
Well, the other thing we forgot to celebrate last week is it was our 150th episode. Whoop, whoop.
Go us. 150 episodes. Most podcasts don't make it to 50.
Oh, no. We're like in the upper echelon now, Dee. We're flying.
We are flying. And we had a really good week last week. So yay.
Hey, yes. So you want to hear about my garden?
I do. I'm sure it's about the only two flowers that exist for you.
Pansies and violas. So, I said last week I got 2 plots of pansies and I got 12 pots of violas. So I got all those planted. And so when you get all that planted, what's the first thing you do?
You go buy more.
You reward yourself by going and buying more. So I went back and I bought 2 more flats of pansies and another 10 violas. So that's 22 violas so far. And then I got all those planted, and guess what I did? I went back to the greenhouse, and they had 8 left. And I said, well, I've given everybody their fair chance to buy these, so I bought the remaining 8. And then the mom said, we thought we were going to have to reorder. They were selling so fast, and then we figured out you bought them all, so that doesn't count. Anyway.
I don't even know what to say to this update.
I have been weeding and stuff, but I got pansies and violas.
I got so many weeds.
You know what I told them though? That when I left the last time, I said, well, if you change your mind and get more violas, let me know.
You know who to call. Carol. So you want to know what I did?
I surely do.
I did a lot. I harvested and roasted peppers because I had a lot of peppers. I still have a lot of peppers. I weeded almost every morning, and then a cold front came through Saturday night, and it was supposed to be this great cold front. In my garden, it didn't do much. I didn't get any rain. I didn't get any wind. I didn't get anything. I took down the temperature 10 degrees, though, so I'll take it. And then I went out there. I have more butterflies this year than I ever remember having, and I took lots of butterflies, and I put them on my group, my Facebook group that's Butterflies of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas. I love that group. They're my favorite group right now because everybody, they find some of the most extraordinary things, county records. And I had a county record this week.
That is awesome. It
was
awesome.
For red banded hair streaks on garlic chives. And then, which I hate garlic chives. Do not plant garlic chives.
But now you have to plant, you have to keep some because the rare butterfly showed up.
Yeah, it did. And so I deadheaded a few things because still deadheading. And I was on Oklahoma gardening again, this time about tomatoes and my potager, which we're going to link to that. That's my update.
Yes, those are awesome updates. I also wanted to say my first colchicum is blooming.
I saw that on your blog.
Yeah. So anyway, that was kind of fun. And I wouldn't have seen that if I hadn't gone out every morning to weed. And by the way, I'd like to brag that I got 0.79 inches of rain on Saturday afternoon. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, we did not get that rain. I needed it. The garden needs rain, but that's okay.
All right. I am doing all the quotes today. Okay. Just so you know. I'm doing all of them.
They're all about old things.
I love everything that's old. Old friends, old times, old manners, old books, old wine from Oliver Goldsmith.
She did these all in honor of my birthday. I know she did.
I did. I did. Well, get a theme going.
Yeah.
Didn't always have a theme before. I get a theme going and they're like, ooh, this is the theme.
There you go.
So we are weeding, we are deadheading, we are clearing out space in our perennial borders by getting rid of nasty stuff. So we should think about fall-sown flowers.
Right. And the reason we do fall-sown flowers, and this is all from the information you got it from Botanical Interests, and I thought it was really good information.
It's great information. We are going to link to it.
We're going to talk again about stratification, which is different from scarification. So stratification is cold period. Some flowers, especially prairie flowers, seem to need that cold weather stratification. And it's an easy way to do it.
Right. And it needs to be stratification and exposed to cold. And that keeps the flower seeds from germinating in the fall and then getting knocked down by the cold. They wait and then they'll get stratified and germinate first thing in the spring when the soils are moist and they're more likely to survive.
Because they have a seed coat that takes some time to break down, and you need that snow and water like rain over winter to do that. That's why sometimes if we have a particularly rainy or snowy winter, I think we have more flowers in the spring, not just because it rained, but because more of them can germinate. It's also like, this is a little bit off the subject, but some prairie flowers need to be burned. If they don't have don't have a burning, if you don't burn them, like burn pastures, then some flowers will not germinate. But in this case, you're trying to get them cold.
There's a word for that, which I've forgotten, but it starts with pyro something.
Yeah, pyro something because it's fire. Okay, so then if you do them in the fall, instead of like doing them in the early spring, and I'm thinking of larkspur, for example. Larkspur is a good one.
Especially with perennials, you get earlier blooms and larger plants.
Right.
Than if you sow them in the spring. You don't have to worry so much about watering. Nature takes care of watering all through the winter. And you don't have to water as much because they're not growing as much, but they are growing a little bit.
Right. They grow as long as the temperature is 40 degrees and above. The roots grow. So perennials are defined, I assume from this, as those plants that live more than 2 years. Gosh, I hope they live longer. Although some plants, like our Oklahoma's native wildflower, our state wildflower, which is Gaillardia. Gaillardia can be a very short-lived perennial, but it's a good example of one that likes to lay down its seed in the fall and then come in the spring.
Right. And the thing about the sowing in this fall is you really need to wait till you've had a hard freeze. And then it's not going to get warm and cause that seed to germinate too soon. And so some people will mix the seed with a little bit of sand. So then when they sow it, they see that little sandy spot and they say, okay, that's where I sowed some seeds.
Yeah.
Or,
I thought,
you could,
yeah,
you could label them.
Yeah, you could. Although I'm really bad about accidentally knocking, the labels get broken here and stuff. So I think the sand idea is not a bad idea. And plus, I think the biggest problem I have with fall sowing is that in the spring I get in a hurry and then I mess up that area. And I go, oh crap, that was where I sowed the larkspur. Yeah. Yep.
The difference between a seedling of a flower you sowed and a seedling of a weed?
What?
The seedling that you sowed will come out so easy and that weed will be dug in there hard.
Yeah, no kidding. That's all the weeds in my garden right now.
Yeah, I kid. So some of the perennials that Botanical Interest said that you can sow in the fall are feverfew, blue and breezy flax seeds. I grew flax in the past. I really like it. It's such a pretty blue. It's like, I need some flax.
I have flax in my meadow in the upper pasture, and I sowed it in the fall.
Forget-me-not, which I've never grown forget-me-not, the actual forget-me-not. I just grown the false forget-me-not, which usually buys a plant.
Yeah.
They have the honesty money plant, which around here can be a bit of a self-sower. I don't think I would plant that.
I'm not planting that one. No, moving on.
Hyssop, which we both like those.
Agastache or Agastache.
Yep. Lavender, which I never thought to sow seeds for lavender. I think I would just buy plants.
I just buy plants for lavender because it's just too much of a pain. It's hard enough to grow lavender anyway. Okay. Lupines.
Yeah. And that would be one that I would want to try I would try that in the fall. It would be a short-lived perennial around here, but in the right conditions, they're such a pretty plant.
They are a beautiful plant. Oklahomans. I've never seen those work really well here, but maybe they do.
They like cooler weather.
Yeah, and we don't have cooler weather most of the time, except in winter when it's really cold. So the next one's I'm a fan.
Fan of milkweed.
Yeah, if you can sow some milkweed, especially for native milkweeds in the fall, do it because they come back much more robust. I've also transplanted plants. I've done lots of different things to try to get milkweed in the upper pasture to take off. It has not taken off yet, but I am always hopeful.
Penstemons, and I can attest that penstemon will self-sow. I have one I think it's called Pink Octopus, and it self-sows all over. And I kind of like it. It's not that hard to dig out. It's not that horrible, but I do like that one. My next one, I want to do this because I've never successfully sown poppies.
I have. I've done both annual and perennial poppies, and you need a big space for the perennial ones. Sometimes they get crowded out by other things you might sow in the area. And a lot of my friends who are very successful with poppies, they throw down the seed if we get a snowfall.
Yes. They say if you throw down the seed like on top of the snow and it kind of melts down, and that's a good way to sow it. What you really need was if you had a hard freeze and then the first snow and you put that seed down, that would be perfect.
Yeah, that just doesn't always happen here. But if you get a snowfall and you have some poppy seeds, go for it. So I don't know this next plant at all. Sundial lupin bluebonnet?
I think it's just the regular bluebonnets, which don't do well here, but would do well in your neck of the woods.
Texas bluebonnet? I think
that's just bluebonnet.
Lupinus?
Yeah. Would you sow
Texensis? Yes, I've actually sown it in the upper pasture several times. And they've come back with some success, and they like really poor soil. They're if it is the Texas one, they're one of the few lupins that likes alkaline soil, because most of the time they like slightly acidic soil, and they wouldn't grow well where you live because it's too cold. They don't even here; it's really too cold. And then Colorado blend yarrow, which I assume is the common yarrow that's yellow, but I don't know.
It could be, yes, it's just a common yarrow, but it's something else you can sow. So those are their suggestions, and I think they're great suggestions. And I'm actually going to do the poppies for sure.
I've done yarrow, white one.
Everything else I kind of have in my garden more or less. And so it's like, I'm going to do poppies.
Do it. I did it last year, and I had some good poppies this year. Although I will say that the larkspur and the, I can't think of the word of it now, the nigella, they kind of overwhelmed the poppies in my little bed.
Yeah. And then they also have a list of annuals. I didn't put those in our show notes, but there are some annuals actually you can winter sow, and they will come up in the spring and be quite lovely. So we recommend go to the Botanical Interest website. They'll show everything, buy seeds. It's a great thing. And I'm moving on.
And use our link because it's an affiliate link and it costs you nothing and it'll help us.
That's right.
Because it costs money to make this podcast and we haven't gone the Patreon route yet.
Nope.
So there we go. Can I do the next quote or are you going to do them all?
No, I said I have to do them all because it's your birthday.
You're very mean. Okay, go ahead.
Age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Mark Twain.
So here's the thing. I don't mind age and I love my birthday. I really do. So I'm right there with Mark Twain because you can't change it anyway. So you might as well just enjoy the fact that one day of the year, people celebrate you.
That's right. And you just revel in it. The more birthdays you have, the older you get.
That's right. And the more people there are to celebrate you. Yay. Okay. Yay. Our veggie is kale. And so we're talking about the difference between the kale that you grow in the vegetable garden versus the ornamental kale that you can find in garden centers. And there's a lot to be said about that. I mean, I grow several kinds of kale. I've grown the ornamental kales. I've grown it all.
Because down at the greenhouse, they got a whole they got a whole mess of ornamental kale. And first of all, if you buy ornamental kale, people are like, can I eat it? And I'm like, I wouldn't, because if they grow it to be ornamental, they may be able to spray it with stuff that you wouldn't put on a food crop.
Well, I think they definitely do, because otherwise cabbage butterflies would make holes in it. So they either spray it with BT, which won't harm you, but why do you want to eat it? Or they spray it with other things that might be pretty strong. I don't know. So yeah, kale in your right now, we don't have much kale. We will next month in October.
Yeah. I'm just now starting to see it. It's like early birds like me that are running in. And I will admit that my pansy planting on the front porch would look nicer if I had intermixed some kale with it and bought in some ornamental peppers, but I was too excited to think about like a design. I just planted pansies.
And you know what? You can always add kale in there later if you want to. Okay. So the kale that you grow in the vegetable garden is usually dinosaur kale, which is Toscano kale, or there's a curly leafed kale that you can grow. And there's also a purple one.
There is. There's a Russian.
Yeah, a Russian one.
A Russian kale.
Mm-hmm. There's several kales on the market.
I'm going to say something about the ones that are grown in the vegetable garden are probably tastier. And then I thought, well, some people, the word tasty and kale do not belong in the same sentence. So
that's funny, because Bill and I went on Sunday to eat at Whiskey Cake, which is this great restaurant in Oklahoma City. And they had a kale salad with rotisserie chicken that had cranberries in it and nuts and stuff. And I love kale salad when the kale has the dressing massaged into it. It's delicious. My husband thought he was going to gag because he kept looking at it and he goes, that just looks gross. And I'm like, it does not look gross because I like kale. Well, not everybody does.
Yeah. This goes back to March of 2020. I went and spoke at this ladies group thing and they had a lunch. I'm like, okay, I'll eat lunch. And it was this kale salad and then like a chicken thigh. And I was like, I barely choked anything down. It was so gross.
That sounds terrible. I mean, kale isn't good in a salad unless you massage the dressing into it, but it is really good in soups. I like to add it kind of toward the end instead of spinach, because spinach can get slimy.
Yes. I like it in a soup. And I never just eat kale. And if somebody like puts a little tiny bit into a salad with lettuce and stuff, I'm good with that. But one time I had mashed potatoes that had kale mixed in, and that was actually pretty good.
I bet that was delicious. So I also make kale chips. And if you go to my blog and search kale chips, you can find my recipe. There's nothing to it.
Do you want me to put a link to your kale chip recipe in our show notes?
We could, if you want to.
I do want to. Anyway, that's all we got for the vegetable garden this week. We are moving right along. Because I forgot to turn on a timer. I have no idea how long we've talked, Dee. So
this may be a really, really long podcast because it seems long at this point. But keep going.
We turn not older with years, but newer every day. Emily Dickinson.
I love her thoughts. How old was Emily Dickinson when she died? Wasn't she relatively young? I don't know.
She was in her early 50s, I think.
Yeah, that's young.
I think
in my world.
In my world, it's young too. So on the bookshelf, we have The Heirloom Gardener by John Fortee.
Which is the cutest little book we've looked at in a while. It's so cute.
It is. And so John, here's this quote. This explains the book in the beginning. He says,
the preface.
Yes. This book is about building upon a sense of place to promote health, happiness, and common ground, whether it be for your own backyard homestead, farmstead, or community. I offer it as a garden historian's pathway to remembering the joys and lessons that pre-industrial technologies and heirloom garden crafts can offer if we choose to adapt them to foster a more sustainable future, which is lovely.
It is lovely. And I'm looking at the section, it's on page 132. And it's kitchen gardens, which actually relates to the fact that I was on Oklahoma Gardening this week because we talked about my potager, the kitchen garden, and also my tomatoes. Right. And I love what he says about kitchen gardens. And he said, early books of husbandry and housewifery recommended raised beds in repeating 4-square patterns, radiating along a path from the kitchen door. Well, that's exactly what I have. I have a 4-square pattern for my potager. And it says, according to other primary sources and pictorial evidence, raised beds approximately 8 to 12 inches tall, mine are taller, were filled with a blend of rich compost and composted manure. Most were 4 feet wide and either 4 or 8 feet in length. Mine are 8 feet in length. So we still do the same things. We just don't always know why we do them, I think. And I think this book gives us a sense of history. I love this book. Yeah. It's beautiful.
I do too. I call it a bedside table book because it's the kind of book where each chapter is more or less self-contained. You can just pick it up. You don't have to read it in order and just open up to a chapter. Like I opened up to the Johnny Jump Up chapter. Big surprise there. And he writes, I have come to favor plants that are reminders of the stories, flavors, and remedies that can be shared between gardeners, cultures, and centuries. Thought that was nice.
My latest client, when I went to see her, she said to me, everything in my garden must contain meaning.
That is interesting.
Yeah. In other words, she was saying that it must evoke some sort of a memory. So in other words, like she plants certain things because maybe her father-in-law loved them. And remember this year, I designed that little section of the garden for my mother-in-law. It has irises, old-fashioned irises in it, and Rosa glauca. And it's still struggling to get started, but it takes 3 years for perennials to do anything. So I think it's going to be really beautiful at some point, and we should plant things that have meaning for us.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there thinking now, if I only planted that which had meaning, what would I rip out at this point? Because I have been here for, it'll be 24 years. Yeah. So pretty much anything has meaning now.
It does. And I think, and over the weekend, you and I discussed that we were going to have a whole episode on, at this point in our lives, we're only going to grow what we really want to grow, basically.
Exactly. Grow the plants you love.
Yeah. Grow things that you love. You do not have to grow things you don't like. And we're going to do a whole episode on that.
We are. But anyway, this is a very lovely book. We recommend it. The Heirloom Gardener. I should read the subtitle, Traditional Plants and Skills for the Modern World by John Forte. And it's the illustrations are like...
they remind me of carvings, ink.
Yeah, woodcuts.
Yeah, they're like woodcuts. And they're just beautiful. And I think it would be a great gift book. It would be a wonderful book to give people. And no, I'm not giving this one away. I think, isn't this Timber Press? Yeah, Timber Press sent us this book to review, and this will be one that stays in my library.
That's right. We're not giving these away. All right. One last quote. Wisdom doesn't necessarily come with age. Sometimes age just shows up all by itself.
I would say always. That's from Tom Wilson.
I never said always. There's no always in that quote. I said.
No, I said I would say always. Oh. I mean, age is going to show up whether you want it to or not, unless you die early. Right. So there you go.
But sometimes it shows up with wisdom. Sometimes it doesn't.
So our dirt this week is about how looks can be deceiving. And this arose out of something we discussed the other day, because you went somewhere and looked, wasn't it at your favorite nursery? And they had some window boxes.
What, the greenhouse, their containers are just
amazing.
Wow. And I said, how often do you fertilize? And basically their water supply has a trickle of fertilizer in it. So they fertilize constantly.
Right.
And so her window boxes look great. And then I went back a few days later and she ripped out a whole bunch of stuff, even though to me it looked fabulous. She ripped out a whole bunch of stuff and starting to replant for fall. So we're going to talk about replanting next fall containers next week.
Yeah. How to revive your containers. That's next week's. So
it really makes a difference.
They're on steroids. I mean, think about it. They're plants on steroids. Yeah. So I have no problem with people using liquid fertilizer in there. You can do organic or non-organic. I don't care in pots personally. I use an organic liquid fertilizer when I think about it. The truth is, I don't think about it that much. And my pots look okay. They just look okay.
Yeah.
It's the end of the season.
It is the end of the season. But I am decided that I'm going to fertilize my pansies every Saturday with an organic fertilizer because they're they're growing in old potting soil that's, I don't know how many seasons it's been in there. Top it off with a little fresh. So I'm just gonna keep fertilizing because I think, seeing is believing.
Yeah, I think it is a good idea. And sometimes in the middle of summer, if we're having a really hard summer, I will put liquid organic fertilizer in one of those spray deals that goes on a hose-in sprayer that mixes your fertilizer. And I spray my garden with liquid fertilizer. And it is not like Super Bloom or that other one that starts with an M. I just picked one of the other ones that are like Tiger Bloom is the one I use.
Right.
And it's organic.
One that's labeled organic. Yeah.
It stinks for a day, but then it's great. And it really does help it. I also wanted to point out that you're going to keep me from buying celosia seeds from Florette again, because it's not that I have a problem with Florette. She's fine. Erin's fine. Erin has a really good company and they work really hard. That type of celosia just doesn't really like it in my garden. And I see her with those big bundles, just pick the flower, but celosia in my case. And I think, oh, I got to have that feathery celosia. Well, I don't water everything with fertilizer every week, and my celosia looks terrible.
And it could be it's your climate that's the problem. She's in a much cooler climate than you. She's in like some valley of Washington State. It's cool there.
Skagit Valley. She's in Skagit Valley. And so they get cool nights and I don't. Now, I know several people who grow really great celosia, the ones that look like coxcomb.
Right.
I just don't. And that's okay. I can grow lavender. Other people can't grow lavender.
I'm making a note. Don't let Dee buy celosia, though. I have no way to stop you if you actually do it.
I'm not going to do it. I'm going to make myself not do it. Okay. So you want to go on to the rabbit hole?
Gosh, you drug me down this rabbit hole right after you, Dee. I cannot believe you.
I pulled you in.
Down. Oh my gosh.
So our rabbit hole this week is Amy's fault, my best friend's fault. It's the Dame of Sark. Sark was an island that's just off of Guernsey, outside of England, between England and France.
Right.
The Dame of Sark and how the Sarkese confounded the German Nazis during World War II. It was the last place that had feudal law. It still has feudal law.
Well, no. They went to a democracy in 2008.
Well, they do, but they do still have
they still have the guy in charge.
I don't know what the guy's name is. She was a dame. Anyway, it was the last feudal kingdom in Europe, and she used both etiquette and formality to broker deals. Plus, she knew people in high places all over the world. And her attitude was, go ahead, tell what you thought of it.
You drug me down this rabbit hole, and I watched a TV documentary about her life that was filmed in 1976. That's on YouTube, and a couple other things. And she basically outsmarted the German officers, but they pointed out that getting to be the German officers that were put in the Channel Islands, it was a very plum assignment. And many of those officers had connections to nobility and stuff. So when she's like, made him bow, and
she pulled the full nobility.
Oh, made him bow and, kiss her hand and stuff before they would talk to her. And they went for it. And so,
thank goodness
she saved the island. Basically,
she did save the island. She completely saved the island and most of the people on the island. And weren't there like 400 people when it started?
Yeah, there were like 400 people if you were not island born, the Germans did eventually deport you to a prison camp.
Including her husband, Bob.
Yeah, that was her second husband. And he was deported to, late in the war.
He was deported to a prison camp in Bavaria, and Bob was an American. Anyway, we shouldn't tell you guys anymore. You guys should go on our link and go look in our show notes at this whole deal. And you can go watch the documentary too. I just read the whole giant article, and I was just amazed. And I loved what she said when the German commandant told her that some of his men died when they were taking up the mines. One of them exploded, and she said, so because it killed a bunch of their people too.
Oh, they put thousands of mines along the beaches so that the residents, one of their primary ways to get food was fishing. And so they wouldn't let them fish.
No,
it was horrible. Horrible. Anyway, it did remind
And
me.
they tried to execute their last cattle. Remember, that was another piece of it too. And she wouldn't let them do it. And so they still have that breed of cattle, I think. And everywhere else, they lost their whole way of life. Everyone did.
They did. There's another island, and I hadn't heard of it, and I didn't write it down, but they did have a breed of cattle that only existed on that island, and the Germans killed them all off, and that breed of cattle
went extinct,
no longer exists.
Which really this will kind of make you grumpy, but it's a great piece of history, and you guys should go look at it, because you talk about a woman. Women are strong, and it reminded you of that book we read, which everybody that's read it loves it.
The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society by Marianne Schaefer and Annie Burroughs. And I also read another book, I think earlier this spring, called The Girl from the Channel Islands by Jenny LaCote, which was also very good, which is about the World War II invasion of the Channel Islands.
And so I think those things were kind of forgotten until recently, when people, started to delve into this and use novels to get information. Anyway, Amy sent it to me because she knew I'd love it.
Two other things on YouTube. There's an interview with a woman who was a teenager. She died in 2018. The interview was in 2017. She was a teenager on the Sark island of Sark when the Germans came, and she ended up falling in love and marrying a German officer who was a paramedic. And he came and stayed on the island. And there's also a tour that I watched, 2 tours.
Oh my!
I told you, it dragged me right in.
And it's a beautiful place, and this is how it fits into gardening. It's surrounded by meadows. It's really, really steep, hard to get to, but it's surrounded by these beautiful flower meadows that don't grow anywhere else because they've kept it pretty much intact. So that's how it fits.
They don't allow cars on the island.
There's still no cars. Still no cars. And the one lady said, if you don't like it, you can find a boat and leave. Oh, and I love that she made the German aristocrats, like the first ones that showed up, the first German soldiers, she made them walk, because normally they have this deal that like hauls you up, and she didn't. It's like a funicular, but she didn't do it because she was like, no, they can walk. I mean, really and truly amazing, right?
It's a big rabbit hole. We're gonna move on to our garden commissions and wrap this thing up, because it is your birthday and you don't want to sit on here on a podcast with me the whole time, do you?
Oh, I could, but it's okay.
So what are you doing in your garden this week?
I'm going to keep removing autumn clematis. Guys, I keep seeing people that I really respect as gardeners all over Facebook sharing how gorgeous their autumn clematis are. Yeah, it's gorgeous, but it's almost, if it's not invasive, it is the most aggressive, reseeding, creepy plant in my garden. So please don't plant autumn clematis, even though it's a great pollinator plant. And I'm also going to keep trying to get rid of garlic chives. I'll never get rid of either one of them. These were both very early things I planted in my gardening career that were big, bad mistakes. That's it.
Yeah. I'm going to continue my 30-day weeding challenge that I started on September 1st. Dee, I am crushing it. I've even been out today and got my hour done.
I'm so proud of you.
I'm crushing it. And I'm going to keep harvesting. Mostly it's tomatoes and peppers. I've pulled out the last of the green beans, and I pulled out the squash. So that is it.
Yeah, my squash is gone.
Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us. That's the best way to spread the word. And hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your gardening friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own website. And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we're in a small commission and it costs you nothing.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.